Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the news briefing for this Wednesday. We have got Dr. Moreno with us today to talk about COVID-19 information. Good afternoon, Dr. Moreno.
Hey, good afternoon, Mia.
Are you ready for questions, or are there any updates you'd like to share?
I can take questions today.
All right. So if there are any questions for Dr. Moreno, go ahead and put them in chat. We'll give people a few seconds to put in their questions. All right, Dr. Moreno, here's your first question. In the last 3 weeks, the CDC has moved Monterey County's community level from low to medium, and this week places it at high. How does the Monterey County Health Department view that change?
Thanks, Mia. So as I've mentioned before, we look at trends, and we know that over the last several weeks, the trend has been an increase in transmission, which is indicated by an increase in case rates, which is on our website. And the CDC has another way of following and reporting on transmission levels, and the public and the media are happy to can review and follow either or both. But again, as I mentioned, the trend has been for an increase in transmission here in Monterey County. Looking at our local data and some data across the state, it looks though that we may be seeing the beginning of a plateau in case rates here in Monterey County and other parts of the state. So hopefully that will continue, because that'd be a good indication that transmission is starting to level off. And I hope that is what's happening at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Moreno. Another question for you. Does the health department have any new recommendations to make in light of that community level change?
So COVID-19 transmission is still occurring here in Monterey County. We're still in a pandemic, so it's still very important for people to keep up to date on their vaccinations against COVID-19, and that includes a booster. Get your booster. We still recommend using face coverings in indoor public settings and in crowded situations. Also, stay home if you're sick. If you're sick with COVID symptoms, get tested for COVID-19. And again, wash hands frequently. It's always a good recommendation, public health recommendation, that people wash their hands frequently to prevent transmission of other viral illnesses.
Thank you. Another question, are there going to be any changes in county regulations, or perhaps the word requirements, knowing that cases are increasing?
So at this time, it looks like the case rate is starting to plateau. Another word for that would be starting to level off. And so at this point, if that continues, that's good for us here in Monterey County. But there's still transmission, so we still, as a department, still recommend that people, particularly people who are at greater risk of having serious illness with COVID-19, wear face coverings when they're in indoor settings.
Thank you, Dr. Moreno. Any other questions for Dr. Moreno today before we let him go? Just wait a couple beats here. All right, another question for you, Dr. Moreno. If more Bay Area cities mandate indoor masking, would Monterey County follow suit as in the past?
So I can't, again, we don't predict the future. What I can do is just describe what we've experienced and what we think is happening right now. So right now, again, we've had an increase in case rates, which indicates an increase in transmission, but it appears like we're starting to see that slowing down. And hopefully in the very near future, we'll have better data, new data that will show that we are plateauing or the case rate is leveling off. And that hopefully, based on what we've seen in the past, when the case rates level off, it's been followed by a decrease in case rates, which would indicate a decrease in transmission. So again, the recommendation again is because we still have transmission of COVID-19, stay up to date on your vaccines, wear face coverings in indoor settings, public settings, particularly those people who are at risk of getting very sick if they contract COVID. Stay home if you're sick, and get tested if you're sick.
Thank you, Dr. Moreno. I've got a question for you here. What is the status of monkeypox in Monterey County? Are you able to provide any information right now?
I can take that question back to the department and see what we can do in terms of getting a response for you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Moreno before we let him go? I'm seeing no other questions coming through. Thank you very much, Dr. Moreno, for speaking with us today.
Sure.
And
You're
we'll
welcome,
follow
Ms.
up and send that additional question to you.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. All right, next on our list today, we're going to talk about Monterey County's new juvenile hall. It has been a long road, but the new juvenile hall is nearing completion, and we're very pleased to have Jose Ramirez, the Assistant Chief Probation Officer, here to talk with us about the new facility, what it will offer. And boy, Jose, it has been a long road for this facility to be up and running, and it's just around the corner.
Yes, absolutely. It has been kind of lost track. I believe we're going on 4 years or so.
We broke ground 2017.
Yeah, wow, 5 years then. So I'll give you a quick overview of the new juvenile hall. So as everyone I think well knows, the old juvenile hall was built, the one that was demolished back in the early, or actually take that back, mid to late 50s. So as time, as we evolved, we were missing, program space, and, there's pieces of concrete that was coming off the wall and whatnot on the old one. But our existing one consists of 3 housing units, which 2 is, individual rooms. And in the 3rd housing unit, it's a dorm setting. One of the benefits of this, it's a campus style approach. So it's a completely different approach of the way we look at facilities or detention facilities. You have a huge, nice gym, 4 classrooms, program space that allows us to break out into groups and then provide programming for the youth that are in custody. As well as, let me see, our brand new booking area. When the kids come in, there's an area where they actually could, we have an interview room where they actually give them some privacy and we go over all these questions. From there, they get taken over to the existing, or actually our new medical offices, which they go into, they do a physical of the youth there in custody. Now, I was on site today, and what's left of the construction is the recreation area. And I was talking to one of the contractors that was there today, and I think projection is like mid-July that should be completed. And I believe that is the final piece of the pie. And then we could be able to occupy that recreation area. And hopefully by then the project will be completed. The other thing too that I failed to mention is that we also have a warehouse for, all the extra equipment that we need to keep for the youth, so that's actually going in, and all that should be completed by like I said, mid-July, I believe is what he said. So we're kind of excited for that to be over. So in summary, I'm sorry I didn't have a PowerPoint or anything like that. So in summary, that's pretty much the project itself. I don't know if there's questions on that.
I do want you to talk a little bit about the challenges in constructing the new juvenile hall on the same footprint as the old juvenile hall. I think people think of a new building and they think it's somewhere else, but you were housing and caring for youth at the same time this construction was going on.
That is correct. So there's a couple of things that happened within those 5 years. So they did it it was a phased approach. And so we had the old juvenile hall still up in operation with youth there. And then when we broke ground, they started the housing units. So as far as security, it was kind of a little bit of a nightmare there for a bit. They demolished the old juvenile hall, and then we moved into the existing our new juvenile hall. And so we had to be very careful and cautious to make sure that all security, the perimeter fence was secure, and clearing construction workers, making sure that they went through the PREA training before they set foot on ground. So there's a lot of that, a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. In addition, within the last 5 years, SB 823 came about, And what SB 823 is about is the closure of the Division of Juvenile Justice, what most people know as DJJ. So there's a hard closure date of June 30th of 2023. And what that means is anybody that was sent to DJJ in years past, now we have to keep them in custody. So as of a few weeks ago, we had a 23-year-old in our custody because he committed the crime as a juvenile. And so anyway, so that's kind of a little bit of a curveball for us because we were not really used to working or dealing with adults. So we've implementing a lot of training for our staff and see your future training as well. So the reason why I mentioned that is because these youth are going to be in our facility longer term, because juvenile halls in the past has always been a short-term detention facility. Once they go through their court case and that gets that's completed, then the judge determines where that individual is sent to either get released or they would go to DJJ or the youth center or a placement or whatnot, or like I said, back home. So there is, that's a little bit of a curveball for us, the SB 823. I'm sorry, I kind of got off track there.
Oh, no, that's great. I also was hoping you might talk, besides the change in youth coming, not youth anymore, but young people coming back from the state, what preparations are needed besides training staff? There may be security issues that you need to put into place to accept those youth. And also, what is the population going to be at the juvenile hall now? A lot has changed over the last 5 to 10 years about the number of youth in the hall.
That is correct. So our population, so the construction began, I've been on this project since the very beginning. So I think it started off like at 160 is what they had projected. They did a study and the growth of the county and what they thought we would need. And this is approximately about 10 years ago. It went from 160 to 120. And then we had, because of budget, we had to cut back our maximum security unit. So currently our current, population or that we're able to house there is 80 youth. We currently run, last week we were like at 46. Today we're at 40. So it's kind of, it's somewhere in between that. Now, currently, as we speak, we have approximately about 20 youth at the DJJ. And if they don't get released from now until then, it's more than likely they will be returning back to our county, in which we will have to, house. And so that's going to create some possible issues here in the, once they do return. I'm hoping that some of them will be released, onto probation or parole. But if they do return, then our count will be, 46 plus 20. And these are kids that have been in a detention facility that's not a medium security, it's high security. So we are beginning to do preparation for that. Even though we're hoping that we won't have all 20 returning, hopefully some will be released. But in addition, I'm seriously doubt all 20 will wind up getting released. So we need to start making preparing on training our staff to deal with these youth because they're way over the age of 18. So those are going to be some of the, I think some of the heartaches that we're going to wind up having here in the near future.
There was also a lot of discussion at this last Board of Supervisors meeting and in previous meetings about the idea of consolidating the juvenile hall and the youth center. And here's another interesting thing to throw at you guys. How would that be accomplished, in the sense of how do you study that and determine whether that could be done?
Well, currently, I believe it's at the county and at the county level, and I believe that they're hopefully going to be hiring a consultant to look at that. Just in my professional opinion, I think it would probably be a nightmare to move the youth from the youth center because they're there for approximately 9 months to a year, and it's a completely separate program than what we run over at the juvenile hall. So I think we would probably have some issues. Well, I know we would have some issues creating a schedule, looking at the recreation area, schooling, and you can't. It's not good practice to mix the populations, just like it's not going to be good practice to mix the population of the youth that are returning from DJJ with some of the younger folks that we have in our custody. It's not smart to do, because what we try to do is the kids that we wind up, the first timers that we call them, is we always hope for our kids never to return back to any of our custody programs, and be successful on probation and never come back. So that's what we always try to be very careful on our classification, and be extremely careful on how the type of programs that we have and how we mix the populations. So
it'd be interesting to see what the ultimately what the consultant may say about how to accomplish that. For people who don't know the difference between juvenile hall and the youth center, could you just explain the difference?
Yes, absolutely. So like I mentioned, in the past, prior to SB 823, juvenile hall was, and it still is now, a short-term detention facility. So the youth would be there, it could be anywhere from a few days to maybe 25 days. It all depends on the case and why they're in our custody. Some of the more serious offenders, they would be there a little longer. So it was a short-term detention facility. And the youth center has always been, from day one, because I was fortunate to be one of the first staff that started when we opened the youth center back in December of '96. We had youth there that were, back then we had youth there that were in there for, like, majority of them were residential burglary, vehicle theft. This is 26 years ago. So those youth were there for about 9 months to a year, and I say that because 9 months in custody, working on whatever issues they had at the time, and then 3 months on aftercare. And then if they were successful, then we would close and terminate their probation at that time. So that's the big difference, really. The whole SB 823, the closure of DJJ, has really thrown a curveball, because now we're keeping these kids a lot longer than what's expected. We currently have a youth that's in custody that's probably going to do 18 months. So, we're not really used to that population, but we've had to adapt and make some changes internally.
Will the new juvenile hall have some of the programs that are much talked about in increasing the amount of services and wraparound services and meeting the needs of youth to help give them a fresh start and get them back on the right path?
So one of the because of COVID, in the last a little over 2 years, we had to cancel in-person programming. So a lot of it was done by Zoom. We just most recently started letting people come in, parents come in and visit to the juvenile hall, and the same for the youth center. And that happened about a week ago. So what we do is we bring in different programs. Out of SB 823, there's program money. And so we will contract with, outside providers that come in and will teach, our youth different programs. So it could be anywhere from Planned Parenthood to CYO that deals with their, some of our kids that are gang entrenched or gang involved. They are the ones that come in and they work with them individually, and then they carry the case out once the kid gets released from our custody. So there's so many different programs that we have, and we're constantly evaluating the programs to make sure that it is what, we're up to date on the times. We're very careful on who we let into the facility, because we don't want to let somebody that's not going to be a positive role model for our youth. So we are always constantly having to check. So the volunteers will come in and they fill out a kind of not necessarily a background check, but they do a volunteer form, and then they go through fingerprinting and whatnot. So it's really important for us to make sure we do find the right people coming in and working with our kids.
Thank you very much, Jose, for walking us through the project. And it's really great to see this is finally, being completed, and you can move on to your next headache, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's been a journey. I will say that, but I think at the very end, and I think that once it's all completed, I think it's a good project because it was very well needed, not only for our kids in custody, but for our staff. So yeah, it's I think it's a really good thing.
And there are no questions. I think you've covered everything. So thank you for that overview, and we look forward to the ribbon cutting or whatever you're going to do to when you open the new building.
Absolutely, yeah. We would love to show the community what we have in custody. What we have. I'm sorry, as far as our new building, and I think it's a long journey, but we're almost there.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us on the news briefing today. Our next briefing will be next week, and we'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.